Welcome back to our year in review series. This time we're just going to be touching on the offensive linemen and the tight ends, kind of combine them in one video, I think, just with the state of the tight end room right now. But we'll start with the offensive line. Steve, a veteran group this year that had some changes across the course of the year. Micah Mazuka at one point started obviously as early in the year. Some weirdness in there. But by the end of the year, kind of found his way back into the rotation, rotating with Gunnar Gatula at left tackle. And then obviously missed the final game of the year because of a torn labrum. You look at the rest of the room, Ben Scott, his final season on campus. Maybe didn't take the step people thought he might in his final season, was pretty solid, but kind of wasn't necessarily a dominant center or his kind of had an opportunity to potentially earn some um, draft praise. Didn't really do that. Bryce Benhart quietly had a very solid year, starting the most games in Nebraska history when it was all said and done. And then on the interior, Nebraska got good play out of Justin Evans and Henry Lutovsky throughout the course of the year. I think Justin Evans in particular kind of emerges as a weapon. As a puller and kind of a guy that down the line and over the next few years is kind of a mainstay along the interior of the line. Kind of Steve, when you look at this room, and specifically, the ups and downs of this year, how do you kind of grade Donovan Raiola, considering the changes to this room and the relatively consistent play the line had regardless?
Yeah, I think when I look back at it, I think the offensive line played okay. I think they did. I didn't think that they were an elite level group by all means, but I also didn't think that they were struggling out there. I think, the veteran guys that they had up front were doing veteran things. They were solid. Henry Lutovsky I was kind of unsure about him earlier in the season. But as he continued to get more reps, as he continued to take over for Micah Mazuka at that right guard spot, I remember seeing some good things and some consistently good things out of Henry Lutovsky. So I thought his development in the program and what he showed in 2024 was good, and I think that that's going to be something that the team remembers and leans on for 2025. Yeah, but it's Justin Evans again is just very, very solid. I think he's tough to block. I think he's tough to get past for defensive linemen. And then at left tackle, just all the movement there, all the change there that they had to go through. Gunnar Gatula having to step up and do his thing and play a lot of snaps as a redshirt freshman. After Teddy Prohaska goes down, and then Turner Corcoran, two guys who are looking like they're going to return to Nebraska. So that's going to create an interesting situation at left tackle. And then on the other side, right tackle, Bryce Benhart's his eligibility has been exhausted. So what do you do with that next? And so I think that's where everybody's kind of looking at the transfer portal. And obviously Nebraska has brought in some potential guys, some misses, some maybe misses. I don't know. We'll wait and see. But yeah, it was a unit that I think didn't blow you away by any means, but they were solid up front. I really think that they were okay, and solid. And of course, you want to be more than okay and more than solid and all that stuff. But it's not easy in the Big Ten. And so I think Donovan Raiola, when you look at him, I really think that he's a good offensive line coach, and he's going to continue to get his guys ready moving forward. But now it's time to retool that offensive line and get some tackles in here from the transfer portal, figure out the center position, figure out the left tackle position, because I think you're kind of set at left guard and right guard. But who knows? I mean, right now the offseason goal should be to get as many good players as you can and then let the rest play out. And that should be what everybody's kind of goal is on the coaching staff. So yeah, I thought it was okay overall. That offensive line unit, I thought it was okay.
For sure. Obviously, the when we go back to the beginning of the year, when Teddy goes down and Turner goes down, and it's Gunnar Gatula suddenly thrust into action. Kind of, you look at that year and him, he didn't expect to play this year. He probably wasn't that in terms of his timeline. It wasn't
Yeah.
expected that he was going to play a whole lot this year. Was thrust into action and held his own. There were some down moments for sure. We saw there was a reason that Michael Mazuka rotated in for him at times.
Yep.
But overall, when you look at the body of work that Gatula, a Lincoln native, put together this season. Kind of how do you grade that individually?
It's always a really good thing, and coaches say this all the time too. And I always thought it as well. When you aren't noticing an offensive lineman, that's a good thing for the offensive lineman. And so when Gunnar Gatula's name isn't being mentioned on the broadcast, that's a very good thing. That means he's not being put in the spotlight because an edge is beating him inside or something like that. So I see a lot of potential with Gunnar Gatula, and I think he may have impressed some people with his play and his development, especially late in the season. Yeah, like you said, Tim, I thought he held his own, but now it's time to make that leap and make that jump for that his third year in the program in 2025. So I thought, what Gunner had to do was stepping up after those two injuries to the old guys in front of him. I thought it was good to see him kind of look like he belongs out there. And you're right, they did have to rotate in Micah Mazuka at left tackle for most of the season. But again, that's to be expected because you don't want to put so much pressure on a redshirt freshman playing his first time out there like he did in 2024. So after not playing at all in 2023. So I think oh well, he played in 4 games in 2023. I'm sorry, Gunner, but yeah, it was encouraging is what I'm trying to say with Gunnar Gatula. Now, is he going to be the guy in 2025? I don't know because in a perfect world, you like these young offensive linemen to sit a couple seasons or a few seasons and work on their strength, work on their development, and just get bigger and stronger and older so they can compete with the men that they're going to be playing with in the Big Ten on the line of scrimmage. But yeah, I don't know. I saw good things. I saw really good things that I think will make Donovan Raiola happy. Heading into 2025.
For sure. And yeah, obviously that's going to be a situation that's to figure out itself with,
Yep.
Turner and Teddy both expected to return, but who knows about their status coming off these
Mm-hmm.
injuries. Teddy, both of them, have dealt with a couple injuries at this point through their careers. And especially for Teddy, at his size, just don't know exactly what he's going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
coming back. Other side, we'll talk about Bryce Benhart and the right tackle vacancy that's left behind. Overall, I mean, like, what a career, started the most games in Nebraska history outside of Ty Robinson. I think those two are tied at the top. And played in so many more and just kind of was a staple for this program for so long. Some definitely there were some years where it was down, but another guy that this year, there were some penalties. That's probably the one thing that, you look back on and like, man, probably would have wanted better from that. Just, a guy that, was, good for a penalty or two per game. But ultimately, held his own. And I think kind of really stepped up. Really, I think one thing I was thinking about this in the bowl game. One thing I don't think that he gets enough credit for, he completely retooled his body mid-career. Like he put on the
Yeah.
weight to be Big Ten ready at his height. But there were times in the Frost era where it felt like he was too big,
Mm-hmm.
and now he's a lean, athletic, and can move, can do all those things. I was really impressed with kind of the way he transformed his body over the past 2 seasons and kind of what he looks like now. I don't know what his future holds, but I think he'll get a workout at the very least because I think the NFL's intrigued in the size and the athleticism at the size.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. When I it was it's kind of notable with Bryce Benhart because he's one of those guys who is the poster boy for Matt Rule coming in and wanting the entire offensive line to move better, and that it's to shed some pounds, lean up, and not be these huge giants out there. And of course, Bryce is 6'9" and like 315 pounds, so he's just a giant in general. But he did do some work and work on his body when Matt Rule and his staff arrived, and credit to the strength coach Corey Campbell for doing work with Bryce Benhart. But yeah, he's kind of the poster boy for he was kind of in the fans' crosshairs for a while there in the early parts of his season, the first few seasons of his career here. But then Matt Rule showed up and he showed improvement. He wasn't a liability out there like he was at times against Big Ten edges. So yeah, his 2023 season I thought was pretty good. Yeah, 2024, this coming off this most recent season. I mean, it was okay for him. Like you said, Tim, the penalties kept popping up with him, and that's something that you probably wouldn't expect and don't want, from your 6 year senior. starting right tackle who knows that he shouldn't be doing those things, and sometimes in key moments in games where the offense, couldn't have that, but they ended up happening. So yeah, I mean, great career for Bryce Benhart. I mean, he's going to leave a massive hole, but it's a hole that I think, Matt Rule and his staff can, well, they'll potentially want to maybe hit the portal for some veteran help to take over for him. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Bryce Benhart's going to get a shot, at the NFL, and he's going to have a good shot at it. And if Matt Rule didn't ever show up in Nebraska, I don't know if that would happen. If
Right.
that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I think the body transformation is the biggest thing. Like I think that saved his career and again working on the technique and getting it down pat and the consistency of having Donovan Raiola for the last 3 years he was
Yeah.
here. That really helped. We could kind of touch. I mean the guys behind the starting group didn't play all that much, and I think this room we'll have all offseason kind of talk about what this room will look like. So I don't want to get too much into the underclassmen just because I think that 25 outlook we have no clue right now just because potential transfer portal additions. I think the spring is going to be big in figuring out, kind of where everyone sits. So much is in the air. We're talking like hypotheticals. Justin Evans right now could potentially start at center next year, and you have a right
Hmm.
guard vacancy, and you have bodies there hypothetically with some young guys, Preston Tuamu, Gibson Pyle, Sam Sledge, Houston Kehana Torres. You've got a lot of young guys on the interior. Outside, you like Grant Bricks, you like kind of the young guys and but all those guys need development. So I think depth of the O line is something we can touch on down the line this offseason. We've got plenty of months of no football to dive into this roster. So before we get out of here, I think we want to touch on the tight end room real quick. Thomas Fidone was the number one tight end for the majority of the season. We saw some flashes from Nate Borkercher, who after some late flashes in the year,
Hmm.
saw an opportunity elsewhere, went to Texas A&M. Luke Lindenmeyer, just steady Eddie, steady reliable
Yeah.
blocker, kind of came into
One of
his
the
own,
best blockers in the room, and
no
that's why
doubt.
he was out there towards the end of the season.
No doubt, and came into his own by the end of the year. Kind of where are you at with this room? Kind of at like at the end of 2024, going into 2025. We're as we're recording this, we're still awaiting a final decision from Thomas Fidone on whether he's sticking around or heading off either to the NFL or the transfer portal. I and those deadlines are coming up here quick for him. So we're expecting a decision here soon, a final decision here soon. Where do you sit on this room? Kind of obviously, I mean, what a kind of weird year it was for Fidoni in particular.
Yeah, yeah. For the tight end room as a whole, I mean, it doesn't really jump out at you. Like the names don't really jump out at you. We all kind of expected maybe more from Thomas Fidone, but again, with his injury history, it was always, kind of up in the air if he would ever reach what we all thought he was going to reach when he was in high school and such a highly touted recruit. But Luke Lindenmeyer showing up towards the end of the season when Dan Holgerson got hired, he came in and all of a sudden Luke Lindenmeyer started playing more. It's like, oh hey, maybe this kid's a really good football player. And we knew that Luke Lindenmeyer could block. He was doing that last year. He kind of came in as that sixth offensive lineman almost, and was just doing things in that big people 22 personnel formation set that they would kind of turn to last year with Marcus Satterfield calling the plays. But I thought Luke Lindenmeyer kind of showed something to where he could be a real kind of part of the offense next year, not just somebody who comes in and blocks an edge once in a while, but somebody who's out there consistently like he was the past 3 games of the season, plus that bowl game. Yeah, Thomas Fidone. We'll see what comes of him. But then behind him, you have just a lot of names that you don't really quite know about. Ian Flint, Eric Ingwerson, Mac Markway, who was a late addition to the program in the summer, just before the season started, I believe, from LSU. He's more of your traditional hand in the ground, I'm going to block you tight end. Of course, he can do a little receiving, but Mac Markway adds a little something to the room as well, some toughness as well. But then, I mean, Tim, where are you at with Jeremiah Jones? Do we think he's going to be starting out with the tight ends, or is he going to be moving over to the receivers? Or Jeremiah Jones is a very intriguing, going to be true freshman in 2025.
Yeah, I think that's a name that, again, I need to see him on campus first, figure out where
Yep.
he's going to end up. But tight end, wide receiver, I think he's just a really good athlete that you find a role for somehow, some way. Again, if he is in the tight end room, it's not going to be in a traditional sense. I just don't see that for him. Just his athleticism, I think, is probably better off in space. Kind
Kind
of
of like
out
what
wide.
Heinrich Harburg was doing in the bowl game.
Right, right. And that's
Move
a
him
name you kind
around,
of
get him in space, get him against matched up against the safeties, things like
For
that.
sure. Yeah, and so I'm interested to see kind of what they do, but I'm very excited to see, in all honesty, if we're talking about the future of this room, I'm very excited to see Mac Markway. I really like Mac Markway coming out of high school. He had a very productive freshman year at LSU. Was primarily used as a blocker, but can do some things in space as well.
Hmm.
I think he gives Nebraska a legit body there, and I think it's why, when they lost Bear Tenney at the end of the 2025 cycle, they weren't stressing
Yeah,
too much
they're
on
okay.
adding a
Hmm.
tight end because they've got Mac coming back, coming off a torn ACL, probably going to miss a good bit of
Yep.
spring as he recovers. But a guy that I don't think he's going to have. He's one of those guys that I think is ready to play as soon as he. I mean, he would have probably competed for snaps this year,
Yeah.
even with the late transfer and if not for the torn ACL, I think he would have found a way to contribute this year. Just I think that's the type of football player he is. Just old school grind, like a gritty old tight end, So
Hmm.
I feel solid about the room. There's not a whole lot of upside. I think there's no
Hmm.
like it depends on what happens with Carter Nelson, but
Hmm.
I like the room. I think it's a steady, stable group, and I think it's going to evolve. I think all of these guys are going to have to commit to roles and learn specific roles within Dana Holgerson's offense. I don't think each tight end is going to look the same or play the same role.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some receiver options in there, and there's going to be guys who, their forte is blocking it and helping out in the run game. Obviously, you want tight ends who can do both. That's why they are tight ends. But it's just tight ends. Really good tight ends don't grow on trees, I guess, but they do kind of seem to pop up everywhere in this state. Tim, the good tight ends everywhere in this state. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, it's a tight end room. Doesn't necessarily blow you away with like the explosiveness and like, oh wow, look at this guy. But again, it's a solid group. Luke Lindemeyer kind of took a huge step and is kind of finding himself, and or maybe people are just discovering him and what he can do for the first time right now in his third year in the program. That's what I'm kind of leaning toward anyway. But yeah, not a explosive, exciting room, I guess, but a solid one.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I don't know if I don't think they I'm not expecting any additions to the room beyond what we already mentioned. Kind of where does Jeremiah Jones fit? Year
Mm-hmm.
two for Ian
Heinrich
Flint, a guy
Harburg,
that's
we'll see what he
yeah,
does.
Harburg's tech in the room now, Mac Markway. And Ian Flint as well, another guy that flashed some
Mm-hmm.
stuff in the spring. Good blocker again, can do some stuff in space as well. So again, I think everyone right now is just kind of waiting on the final decision from Thomas Fidoni, and from there, I think they'll adjust and move on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think overall, I'll also say this, on Thomas Fidoni, I don't think the kid's gotten a fair shake to no one's fault. It's no one's fault. Um, it's
I
it's more it's the injuries. It's tough. It's just kind of one of those things that he's not the same player he was out of high school. It's a completely different type of player at this point. And it makes it tough. You feel for him.
mm-hmm.
And honestly,
Yeah.
I appreciate that he stuck it out and he's maximizing as much as he can, while also understanding that he's not the same athlete he was a couple of years ago.
When I see just the online stuff about Thomas Fidoni, I just kind of close my eyes, shake my head because those people who are sending those social media posts and just talking about him, they had never gone through what Thomas Fidoni has gone through. They've never gone through two ACLs probably. So whenever I see just the negative talk online about him, I just don't agree with it because, like you said, Tim, he's not the same player who he is. He's not the same player that he was. He's gone through some really tough things that a lot of people probably would not come back from and would just like maybe call it a career and say, no, I'll go do something else. Well, he hasn't done that. He's continued to work. He's put in so much work and effort, blood, sweat, tears, all that stuff just to get on and stay on the football field. And now he's played two full football seasons. So I think that's an accomplishment up to itself after how he started his career. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens with Thomas. He'll do whatever he thinks is best for him. But yeah, I mean, It's a yeah, like I said, it's an okay room. It doesn't jump out at you, but there's some solid pieces in it.
For sure. And yeah, that'll probably do it for us here. We appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be flipping over to the defensive side of the ball here soon. So stay tuned for all of that over at the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel. Tune in to InsideNebraska.com as well for all of our written content. We'll have basketball this weekend. Again, we're waiting on the decision of Thomas Fidone and a few other final like draft decisions. Portal's still active, so stay tuned for all the updated intel on that as well. We'll be back next week, or we'll be back soon with more episodes, and we'll be back next week with Recruiting Blitz and a few more shows as well. So appreciate y'all tuning in once again.